Hi, so today I thought it would be fun to lock myself inside of a room and read a 700-page TikTok romantasy book.
You can reshape a turd an infinite number of times, but it's still a turd. It still stinks.
I don't want children. I take a tonic every phase, which is so fantasy. I take herbs. I'd you, marvel you in italics, then split you like an egg. Hi. Hello, I hope you're taking care of yourself. If you're new here, my name is Lexi. Welcome to the channel. It is currently 10 in the morning, and because I keep what my parents would call degenerate hours, I don't normally film this early, but we have a lot to get through today. Nothing to spur me into action, quite like a completely frivolous, self-imposed challenge. And that challenge is taking the form of this wonderful novel, this rectangular prism ass book. I bowled this up as a punishment during extra innings of my summer TBR video, and it has been lurking ever since, listening to me, judging me, waiting for a moment of weakness like what we're experiencing today. And I really do think that the only way to motivate myself to start a book that looks like this and also has the reputation that it has on the internet is to try to just do it all at once. Something. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. That's how I'm feeling right now. This video overall is going to be more of a I read this book so that way you don't have to kind of thing. So I will be including a lot of spoilers as necessary to understand what exactly is going on inside of this beautiful little book. And this is partially because I don't foresee this book being the kind of thing that's going to like absolutely rock my world. I mean, if it is, I'll throw in a clip in post to warn you and to tell you to pick it up. But I think that due to its length and its relative infamy as one of the biggest TikTok romantasy releases of the past couple of years, 250,000 ratings on Goodreads, by the way. I imagine that the target audience for this video is just going to be people who kind of want to know what the fuck is going on, so that's what I'm delivering to you. And for the record, I am going in with an open mind. There definitely have been TikTok romantasy books that I have found to be fun, even when the plots were quite ridiculous. Likewise, there have also been books that I wish I could unread, but we can't always get what we want, can we? My only rule for this experience is that I cannot leave this room until I am done with this book, other than to pee until I get food, because I mean, I'm not a masochist. Although I did actually consider making another rule that I can only eat eggs all day, because the book is called When the Moon Hatched, and what hatches? Eggs hatch. But the problem with that is that I don't really like eggs, so there weren't a lot of foods that would have worked for me, I don't think, under that plan. Realistically, my reading base for a book like this, that is, let's look, 690 pages with margins that look like this. I would say it's slightly above average margins. They're kind of like typical romance novel margins, honestly. At my normal reading pace, I feel like this will take approximately 10 hours. Add in time spent on camera, reacting to things, trying to figure out how to explain what the fuck is going on. Basically, I'm hoping to be done by like 2 in the morning. That's my goal. I'll record like a little timer though of just raw reading time, how long it takes me to get through this entire thing, because I mean, it's also just, it's been a long time since I've tried to see how fast I read. But yeah, this is my new reality. These 4 walls, this is home. But before we actually get into this grand adventure together, I just have a quick word from the sponsor of today's video, which is Book of the Month. I love Book of the Month. You could say that we're close. You could say that we've been around the block. We are married, actually, and we're not even just staying together for the kids anymore. No, we're just that lucky to have found something this real and rare together. If you have somehow never heard of Book of the Month before, let me fix that. Book of the Month is a monthly subscription service where every single month, some of the best and the brightest in all of the land when it comes to books, they all get together and they pick out a selection of usually between 5 and 7 books a month that represent the very best of the best of new releases that are coming out. You pick a book, they ship it directly to your door in hardcover, and you read it with the peace and the serenity in your heart that you can only really find when a decision is made extremely easy for you. This month I got 2. We have Red City by Marie Lu, who is a super popular young adult author that I've been meaning to read for quite a while, and this is her adult fantasy debut, so it feels like a really good time. We also have the Sprayed Edges, which I actually think look really nice. The premise for this reminds me a lot of Jade City, if instead of jade that can grant you magical fighting enhancements in Magic, you have sand that can grant you magic that gives you like charisma and beauty and the ability to win friends and influence people. And also if instead of following primarily one family, you're following these 2 people who are a part of rival syndicates but had like a really complicated and tumultuous history because they were childhood friends who were later turned enemies by circumstance. All things I like, all things I find to be a pretty good time. The second book I got is Hazelthorn by C.G. Drews, another author I've been meaning to read for a while. This book is very October. It is young adult horror. People comp this author a lot to Andrew Joseph White, who is one of my favorite people on the planet. And this is a queer, gothic, haunted house kind of story about a mysterious death that happens inside of this magical, spooky estate that's filled with vines, sinister seeming botanical stuff, probably a lot of secrets and intrigue. Both of these books, I think, sound fantastic, especially since the weather is finally starting to get a little bit cooler. And if you're interested in reading either of them, you can check out the link in my description and use code CANDY to get your very first Book of the Month book for only $5. And also, you can get a cool hat like this one. They are clothing us now as well. Thank you again to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate you guys. Love working with you, but let's get back to it. Okay, welcome back from your brief rendezvous with my ad. I hope you had safe travels. This book begins with a glossary, which I tend to appreciate in fantasy novels. The 5th season has a glossary that I used like all the time when I was first starting that series. There's also a character guide that is alarmingly 4 pages long. I mean, I guess it is a 700-page book, so I didn't really know what I expected. But most shockingly to me, there's a pronunciation guide that doesn't have stress, which personally, if you're going to go through the effort of doing a pronunciation guide, I feel like stress is, at least in English, arguably one of the most important things when it comes to actually how to say any of these names. We also have a dedication with kind of like a wholesome dragon watercolor pattern going on. For those who feel small and quiet, spread those wings and roar. Do you guys remember when Katy Perry was good before she went to space? A long time before she went to space. With genuinely no malice in my heart, that is kind of what this whole ensemble gives. Anyways, I am going to get started with this, obviously, but I feel like before I do so, I just kind of want to read the back of this book to you to really set the scene, especially since we're like 4 or 5 minutes into this video and you still don't really know what this is supposed to be about. As an assassin for the rebellion group Fear Du Oth, Rave's job is to complete orders and never get caught. When a rival bounty hunter turns her world upside down, blood spills, hearts break, and Rave finds herself imprisoned by the Guild of Nobles, a group of powerful fae who turn her into a political statement. Crushed by the loss of his great love, Khan Vagor took the head of a king and donned his melted crown. Now on a tireless quest to quell the never-ebbing ache in his chest, a clue lures him into the capital's high-security prison, where he stumbles upon the imprisoned Rave. Echoes of the past race between them. There's more to their story than meets the eye, but some truths are too poisonous to swallow. Yeah, wonderful. Really does not give you anything. Hopefully this explains to you why I, myself, do not really know what this book is about. Let's find out together. Let's go on this fun little adventure, okay? Okay, I'll see you soon. Hello. 106 pages into this journey, 1 hour and 6 minutes, ironically, into this reading experience. Feeling confused, feeling uncertain so far. I've been writing down a couple of thoughts about this book as I've been reading, but first, let me tell you what's happening. So you have this girl named Rave. As per the back, she is an assassin, a small, feral, and powerful beyond imagination assassin who is working with this rebel group named the Fear Du Oth, which I guess means from the ash in some ambiguous in-universe language that is not explicitly described to us. And we begin this book with Rave tracking a mark. His name is Tarek. He is not in the pronunciation guide, but he is cartoonishly evil. He basically operates this underground child fighting ring where he keeps kids in cages that can only be opened up with the use of his palm print. Also, he assaults women and abuses his own kids on top of that, just to make him extra evil. So that's bad, and Rave is obviously not a fan of this. So at the beginning of this book, she is cosplaying as basically a bard at this bar. The setting overall for this book is kind of giving a medieval arcane. There is an undercity that is super poor, and then an overcity that is also kind of poor, but not everybody, because there is an immense class disparity. But anyways, Rave is cosplaying as a bard to try to like siren song lure this guy in. Turns out she has the voice of an angel. Nobody has ever sang songs like she sings songs, and this is especially the patrons at this bar because she is supposed to be a null, which represents a class of people that do not have the abilities to hear the elemental songs, which is what allows you to practice magic. People who can do that have like special beads on their ears to indicate that they have that ability, and she has a null bead, so she's not supposed to be able to. And you can think of this magic system as like Band Kid Avatar, because that's basically what it is, except unlike in Avatar, where it's only the avatar that gets to do all 4 kinds of bending, I imagine it's pretty rare, but there are just regular people out in the world who can like duel and try bends. I don't know if there's anybody out there who is the avatar who can do all 4 things. This feels to me like something that our main character might have access to down the road. But right now, she's a null, or at least that's what she wants you to think, because psych, truth is, she's an airbender, and she's an exceptionally gifted airbender at that. So when this guy tries to follow her home, inevitably, because he's a monster and she's supposed to be powerless, she surprise tortures him. She basically starts like waterboarding him with air, or I guess in this case, the lack thereof, but she tortures him to death. She cuts off his hands while he's still alive, and then she carves C-A-R, for child abuser, and then also rapist into his chest. Technically, she carves it in the order RCA, but in my head, I was imagining just car. and then she pushes him into this ravine where he is then impaled by a stalagmite. So successful assassination overall, I would say. She puts the severed hands in like a drop chute so that more people from her organization can go and rescue all of these children inside of the child prize fighting ring. And her job is theoretically done, except while all of this is happening, there is a complication. And that complication is that, oh no, there's this super hot and mysterious man who ran into Rave like right after she killed this guy and also had run into her at the bar. So low key, he has the ability to implicate her in this crime. And despite the fact that Rave is supposed to be the baddest that there is, she's cold, she's feral, she has no allegiance to mortal men. She is out only for herself and also for that little sister figure that she rescued that one time from the Undercity, but no one else. Fuck everybody else. Despite all of that, she lets this guy go. Mostly because, I shit you not, I wish I was making this up. He apparently smells fantastic. He smells like, and I quote, there are two options, a smoky musk, pinched with the smell of freshly split stone, softened with notes of something buttery. Or alternatively, he has a scent, quote, so deep and drugging, like smelted stone, topped with a ladle of cream. Whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. But I guess that throws her off so much in combination with a bare minimum amount of human decency when he asks her if she's okay, considering that she was just seen hanging out with a known psychopath. That's enough for her. That's enough for our murder Barbie to just leave a loose end out in the world. And it's also completely obvious at this point that this is our MMC. After that, she goes to buy some like magical crafting invention supplies for her little sister Ward figure, whose name is Essie, and does a lot of like crafting and invention. That's kind of her thing. She's very smart. And while she is there, it turns out that this is also where one of the leaders of her rebel group lives, Sareem. And here it is revealed to us that maybe this rebel group is not actually as based and woke as we have, I guess, not really had any reason to come to believe, but probably believe anyways, given our experiences with rebel groups in fiction. The main goal of the rebel group, as you might assume, is dethroning the current king, because the regime, we are told, is super duper bad. They're like constantly conscripting these young benders into this massive military, using them for uncertain ends that I imagine we will learn more about. And predictably, they don't really give a fuck about any of the citizens left behind. But apparently neither do the rebels, because it turns out that Rave was only able to do this like side quest mission where she goes and rescues children and slays a predator because of how indispensable she is generally in order to like placate her, because she's really upset about this stuff and wants to like help even though nobody else does. And Sareem is pissed about it. She thinks that it is a waste of resources because to her it's meaningless and poor people should just suffer and die, suffer and die, suffer and die. So that's neat. Rave is also, it turns out, not helping the rebels out of the kindness of her heart. It's because she is bound for some reason. I'm sure we're gonna find out more about this later, but at some pivotal point, Sareem rescued her, found her, helped cover up, this like cheeky mental breakdown that she had that in some capacity involved murder, and she convinced Rave to put some of her blood inside of this vial, and now that her blood is in the vial, she can basically be voodooed by Sareem, both for good and for evil. Sareem can like use the vial to heal her more quickly than she would be able to heal on her own, but also to cause her pain if she does something that Sareem doesn't agree with. Side note, Sareem makes Rave pay all of the operational costs for rescuing these children out of her pocket, just again to really drive home how much the rebellion does not actually give a fuck about any people who are actually vulnerable. But anyways, order of business, the reason that they're talking is because there is, it turns out, a bounty hunter who has just showed up in the city on order of the king, hunting people inside of this assassin rebel group. Oh no, Rave of course is like, let me kill him, I can do it, I'm the best that there's ever been and he would never stand a chance against me. And Sareem is like, no, actually, sorry, I would just rather let a bunch of other people inside of our org die instead who matter less than you until this guy is satisfied and leaves us alone, because you are indispensable for reasons. And actually, I order you to like stay home. You're now in house arrest, which was just, it was never in a million years going to work. But Sareem is still surprised, I guess, that Rave does not find this to be a compelling argument. Also, Sareem is implied to be banging the supreme leader of the rebels, who is named the Eldling. Rave has never met the Eldling. I don't know if anybody has ever met this guy. Maybe it's only Sareem, but Rave uses this information, which for her was like an educated guess, to basically call Sareem a slut in response to this argument. So that's also happening. And that's where we are. We have a bounty hunter in town. We have a little sister who Rave wants to protect, but at the same time, she's like battle scarred and hardened by the world, and she refuses to admit out loud that she loves Essie. That's like too far. We have a mysterious man / witness who is definitely not the bounty hunter. There's no way that that's true. Oh, and also Rave has this like
pet parchment note thing, because the way that mail is sent in this world is basically through folding these little semi-sentient origami birds that then can fly magically and find their way to the right destination. And Rave intercepted one by accident once, and then it refused to fly off. So now it's her friend. And yeah, I mean, that's where we are in the main story, apart from the prologue, which I will now describe to you, completely unrelated to anything that's like happening in the modern day. But the book begins with this thorough description of the like founding religious lore of the land, which is basically that once upon a time there were not 4 but 5 elements. It's like avatar and then also ether, which is a concept of space and absence. And ether was really lonely because earth and water had a thing, and then fire and air also had a thing. So he was like the only god that was uncoupled, which was a bummer for him, I guess. And the dragons that were created in this world, because yep, there are dragons. We don't really know shit about them yet, but they're powerful. Humans want a piece of that power. So naturally, in order to secure that power, humans start mass murdering these dragons, as they are wont to do. And out of protest, I guess, instead of just dying normally when they were slain, they start floating upwards into the atmosphere, and they like calcify as moons that are now orbiting the planet. Just a fuck ton of moons made up of dead dragons, which is actually really cool imagery. But then the moon started falling, and nobody really knew what to do with that because, I mean, one asteroid on Earth really fucked over the dinosaurs. So I imagine that recreating that event 7 times, pretty bad for civilization at large. So as the gods are trying to figure this out, all of the coupled up elements realize that it's actually Ether's fault. He's so lonely and desperate and sad all of the time, and he wants love so bad that he's literally pulling the moons back out of orbit into the atmosphere, like into his domain, leading to them, of course, crashing down into Earth. So naturally, as you would do, the other gods cut this guy up into tiny pieces, and they lock up the essence of his soul into this little crown that is then passed down through a particular human family line. I guess that's the only right way to do. That's the only way to handle the situation. So that's the background. That's what you learn in like the first 6 pages of this book. We also just got our first male POV chapter, but honestly, it's like borderline nonsensical right now. So I'm just going to wait until I know what's going on to tell you more about what's happening. My thoughts so far on this book. I actually find the world building to be kind of fun. Just the visual of, oh, you have this planet. That also, by the way, they measure day-night cycles in terms of auroras that are circling the planet. So just imagining a skyline that's like this beautiful aurora and then hundreds of dead dragons in the sky orbiting around the planet is pretty neat. It's really cool stuff. I don't think that we've really diverged yet from the typical fantasy medieval assassin setup so far, so I can't really say anything there, but I mean, there's a reason why elemental magic is such a common framework. It's because it's fun, and it also has this like musical song elements to it that's pretty interesting. Depending on the strength of your magic, so too does the relationship that you have with the patron god who gives you the magic become more significant and more important inside of your mind and life. And as a result, it's become very common for the really, really powerful people to wear these iron pieces of jewelry that can act as kind of magical suppressants. They're basically magical earplugs that if they don't wear them, they'll go cuckoo bananas crazy because of how loud the gods are inside of their head, depending on how powerful they are. And that's a pretty fascinating skeleton, I think, for a magic system. I also don't hate a trope, okay? I'll admit it. Every once in a while, I am a fan of the like edgy assassin girly who pursues retribution at all costs. I tend to feel a lot of anger inside of my life, and it's nice sometimes to see somebody who can do something with their anger inside of fiction. So the actual bones of the book are honestly all right so far. I feel like for me, by a lot, the biggest problem is the writing, which is pretentious and overwritten, but not in like a prize-winning way. It's pretentious in a creative writing seminar featuring the 19-year-old girl who's written like 12 books, but they're just not ready yet for publication. And you can just tell when you read something by this girl that she has never received a single piece of honest feedback inside of her entire life. That's the vibe of this. It's just so clearly written by somebody who has never been told to kill their darlings, and it shows. I can already tell why this book is 700 pages long. Some examples, because I've tabbed a few different things. Here, she is describing a pregnant woman that she's about to perform with. A thin, fine-bones female sits on a stool within, holding a white fiddle etched in luminous runes that probably encourage its sound to carry. She wears a simple, full-bustled gown similar to mine, but blue, and much looser around the discreet swell of her babe-laden abdomen, which is just one of the strangest ways I think I've seen a pregnant woman described recently. A babe-laden abdomen. So true. Another one. I accept the amplifying stick with a demure dip of my head instead, wrapping my sweaty palms around the hollow length of metal littered with dots and swirls that emit their own radiance. All one sentence, by the way. This isn't a letter from Essie. What if I desperately need a stick of porthonium to prevent the world from crumbling, and you're too busy carving words into somebody's chest to unfold my lark still stuffed in your pocket? Think of the world, Rave, and the hyperfixation I'm currently nursing. Oh, also this bugs me in isolation. Just the phrase, a soft launch into grief. inside of a fantasy novel. I can't handle it. Need I even remind you as well of the smell of seared stone and cream? Oh, also, this was randomly in there. She's talking about the evil king in this sentence. I doubt he's gone hungry before. Not really. If he knew the weight of a hollow egg, perhaps he wouldn't be so incompetent. Though, maybe not. You can reshape a turd an infinite number of times, but it's still a turd. It still stinks. So true, so true. I don't know, man. We are still in the expository phase, I think, of this novel, so things could get better once more starts happening. But the other side of this as well is that a lot of the fantasy names for things are so fucking dumb so much of the time. The Avatar gods, here are their names, okay? You have the Ether god, Kalis. This is the only name that feels creative in any capacity because the others are just their fantasy versions of normal words that are spelled wrong. We have Boulder, the earth god, like Boulder. Rain, with an E, the water god, self-explanatory. Clode, the air god, yeah, cloud. And then Ignos. Can you guess what Ignos is the god of? And then also, in a similar vein, sometimes words for things are changed, but not all of the time, which I wouldn't have a problem with if the words weren't stupid. For example, day, instead of being day, is day, but with an E. Wow. And I mean, before you say that maybe she's trying to commit to the bit of drawing inspiration, like so many fantasy authors do, from Gaelic or Celtic culture, the word for night, in comparison, is slumber. Last slumber, real phrase used in this book. One that particularly got me, a one-off. Once, I watched somebody drop a line beneath an icy lake and reel a long, slithering eel to the surface. Eel. Like eel, but with an ah instead of a second E. What? Also, all of the dragon types are just their compound words like molten maw or moon plume. But then the names of actual characters are shit like Komori Daffodone, which are not words. I don't know why the only thing that we're making up are names and everything else is just extremely simplistic. Also, one thing that got me in the glossary that I'm kind of starting not to like because I feel like the book is just using the fact that there is a glossary at the beginning as an excuse to not explain anything that's actually happening, but regardless, in the glossary, she spends page time giving you definitions for shit like this. Grandma and grandpa, both with H's instead of without H's. Do you really have to spell that out for us? Save the page count, okay? Trust that your readership has more than about 3 collective brain cells. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna keep going. Right back into it, and something bumps against my cheek, ripping me from the fiery clutches of a dream that was melting flesh from my bones in slow, sizzling sweeps. This is what I mean, dude. You're doing too much. And you're also doing too much in a way that is especially bad because not pictured in this quote the like 7 other times so far that flesh melting has been used to describe an emotion. This is what I mean when I say that it's overwritten and not in a fun way. It's overwritten in a way that feels unedited. Okay, page 220. I am 2 hours and 28 minutes of actual reading time into this book, which is fast for me, by the way. This is faster than I thought that this would go. I think because there are a lot of really short chapters, a lot of like line breaks and paragraphs that just have one word in them, stuff like that, that's kind of making it fly by. But a lot is happening. Let's unpack. So immediately after we last spoke, Essie just fucking dies, which, I mean, I guess I should have seen coming, but it's a long book, okay? I thought they would wait until like page 500 to kill off the young ingenue character that spurs our main protagonist into action, but I guess not. I was actually kind of close to crying during that scene, and I'm not afraid to admit it, okay? I have a heart, sue me. But in the wake of that, it turns out that Rave has like fantasy DID. She has an altar that takes control during moments like this of extreme emotional torment, and this altar is called the Other. The Other's primary personality traits are being bloodthirsty and wanting vengeance. So basically Rave's normal personality, except with absolutely no regard for conventional morality. Unlike Reva, the Other will just do a little bit of cannibalism if the thought strikes her. That's her vibe. Rave wakes up from a nightmare, sees that Essie has been stabbed, which Essie absolutely should have just gone to a flesh smith, I think. Fuck, what are they called? A flesh thread, my bad, a doctor in this world, but she didn't because she was scared that the wound was so severe that she would die anyways, and if she did die at a random flesh thread's office, then nobody would tell Rave because nobody knew that Rave was living with Essie except for both of them. And basically, at the cost of her own life, Essie went home to die because she didn't want Rave to think that she would ever abandon her, which, you know, I mean, it's a lot emotionally. It is a decision that is kind of, you could say flawed, but since Essie, I think, is a child, it makes a little bit of sense, I guess. So Essie dies
dies in Rave's arms after Rave tells her for the first time that she loves her. And as it turns out, as per the dagger that Essie was stabbed with, the person who killed her was the new bounty hunter in town, Rek. Not the same guy from the beginning of the book, actually. Different guy. That was a failed prediction. But he is transparently evil, transparently just in it for cash or whatever. And the dagger that he stabbed Essie with is actually a summons. So Rave realizes that Essie only died because of Rave's involvement with the rebel group. Obviously, this is not a good thing, I think, for Rave's morale overall. So she blacks out. The other wakes up and goes on a murder spree and kills literally 25 of Rek's guys up until he's finally able to capture her. And Rek knocks her out to take her to jail. But not before she's able to eat his finger up to the knuckle. So yeah. Also, some new evidence towards her being the Avatar, as I predicted. She uses some earthbending during this fight. She invokes our boy Boulder to make some like stalagmites or something. But yeah, she goes to jail. The kingdom wants to make an example out of her to try to deter other rebels, but they also need information from her. So she is tortured a bunch. She refuses to give up any information during this entire process because she just has an ironclad will, inner strength, the likes of which you have never seen before. And ultimately, she's told that she's just going to go to trial, which will predictably have the result of one of two punishments that they do in this kingdom for situations like this, the really bad traitor guys. They either draw and quarter you, or they feed you to the dragons. So both suboptimal, I would say. But while she is waiting for this trial, who appears but Khan, the male main character whose name I really only know because I've read the back of this book. Khan seems surprised to see her in prison, I would say. He's there to rescue this like child-sized sentient weasel creature that's in a neighboring cell. That's the only reason he came around, but just so happens that Rave was also there. Up to this point in the story, he had only ever seen her with half of her face veiled because that's the way that she walked around the kingdom as a thief assassin type. But he finally sees her face for the first time, and immediately it is obvious that he knows exactly who she is and that they have some amount of history together. Rave remembers nothing. She does not recognize this man. She is missing whatever memories that he seems to have of her, and she also just kind of dislikes him on sight on principle, other than feeling forced to admit to herself, as if under duress, that he's hot and gigantic and also smells really good still. And then also, cherry on top, one of his attendants who came with him to the prison lore drops in conversation that this guy is actually one of the kings of the entire land. It's basically divided up into 3 different mini territories, and yeah, he's apparently one of the evil kings of the one that's the furthest away geographically from where Rave lives. So that makes her like this guy even less, despite the fact that, I mean, he certainly doesn't seem evil. He hasn't done anything evil on page. The closest we've seen when it comes to any potential for malice is just him recognizing that Rave is injured and feeling bloodthirsty, angry thoughts about what he wants to do to the people who hurt her. Anyways, for reasons unknown to her, he smuggles her the night before her execution because she is sentenced to execution. She rolls the dragons instead of being drawn and quartered. So in her head, she's like about to die, so there's no point to this. But Khan smuggles her to a healer. She doesn't get it, but she allows it anyways. Honestly, I like him. I hope that I'm not going to regret saying that, but I do. Right now, I feel like he's just kind of obsessed with her, but he's obsessed with her in this extremely patient and somewhat tortured way where it's obviously giving he never thought that he would see her again, but he kept looking anyways because his love is everlasting, and now he's found her and he's just happy to be there. He doesn't need her to know who he is. He's just happy that she's alive or whatever. I like that, okay? I'm a simple woman. He's not pushy or edgy right now, and that's nice. That's different for this genre. One thing I don't like though, side note, is that this book refuses to use the words girl, boy, man, woman. It's only fucking male and female every single time. It's driving me up the wall. The female is confused by your interest. The male turns his attention back on me, his all-consuming stare etched in so many shades of disbelief. A hooded female with a proud but delicate stature steps into the confines of my booth. Like, I can't handle this. Those aren't even the worst examples. I could find so many more because, again, no other words are used ever. And I think that they're all supposed to be like elves or fae or something. I mean, they're really just people. They don't really have any obvious biological differences so far that I can see, but I think that they're technically supposed to be a different race. So maybe that's why it's like this, but it's every time, dude. I can only take so much of the male approach to me. The female wants this from me. Oh, why? Anyways, where we are now is Khan is busting her out of jail during her execution. I think, maybe. Honestly, I don't know. It's a little bit ambiguous right now. But the queen of the kingdom of her territory has also shown up and seems to somehow also know who Rave is. So she's also trying to stop the execution. There's that. Rave, by the way, is actively tied up onto a stake in the sky, being circled by dragons that want to eat her during the present moment. So yeah, that's the situation. I imagine that what's going on is that Rave is like Khan's wife, and she just doesn't know because some magic took away her memories or something. I honestly think that part of my confusion that I felt a little bit reading this book is that we have no idea how old this woman is. And I just assumed, like with most romantasy, at least the non-immortal characters are like 21 or under. That's normally the vibe. So I didn't expect her history to have this many events inside of it before she started having memories again. But I mean, if she's a bit older, I guess it makes a little bit more sense. Side note, there's a side plot happening as well that I feel like now is the right time to tell you about since stuff has actually started to happen. While you are reading, you're also getting occasionally these interspersed little diary entries from this girl named El Yuen, who is a part of some kind of nobility. She's somehow wealthy. She is 9 years old at the beginning of these entries, I guess. I mean, she doesn't write like a 9-year-old, but that's how old she apparently is. It's also 100 years ago, by the way. It's 100 years prior to the date that's given to us at the start of the story. The modern day of this book is year 5,165. 3 zeros, 165. Yeah. Anyways, El Yuen is following her brother up a mountain because he's trying to steal a dragon egg because he's come of age. That is how people bond with dragons in this universe. You go up a mountain, you steal an egg from the nest, and you like wait with it in these very specific circumstances for it to hatch. So that way, once it does, it will pair with you and become your bonded pet dragon. But things go wrong during this mission. Her brother is able to get an egg, but then he falls down a fucking ravine or something, but doesn't break the egg. He's able to protect the egg, but unfortunately he has broken both of his legs. So he can't walk, he's in a ravine, and somehow, despite being 9, El Yuen is able to rescue him from this ravine and bring him back to their little camp in the mountains that they're supposed to stay at until the egg hatches. And he just exists in basically a coma for a couple of weeks until right before the egg is finally about to hatch, their camp is attacked by monsters. But then, before they all die to the monsters, very conveniently, the mother dragon, who has been looking angrily for her egg this entire time, finds them, burns all of the monsters, and instead of slaughtering El Yuen and her brother, I guess that El Yuen's aura is just, it's so spunky and cool and fresh that somehow she is able to miraculously bond with this mature dragon, which is super duper rare. I mean, obviously it would be harder than bonding with a newborn dragon. Also, again, I mean, she's 9, so that makes it especially impressive. But yeah, I mean, now they both have dragons. They go home. Her brother's dragon can't fly because of the way that the hatching was kind of like fucked up by the monsters attacking. And her brother can't walk. He's like paraplegic now, so that's tough. But over the course of 9 more years, El Yuen basically does physical therapy with her brother's dragon until ultimately it's able to fly, and he flies on the dragon, and it's like this big cathartic moment for their family. Wow, how cool. And then right after, he gets poisoned and he dies along with the rest of El Yuen's family. It's implied that the person who poisoned her family was either Khan's brother, or I think based on the timing, I don't know how long these people are supposed to live, but more likely his dad or his grandpa or something, because apparently tales of El Yuen's aura and brilliance have spread across the lands, and they wanted to marry her because she bonded with a dragon at 9. That's pretty cool. So yeah, that's her tale of woe. I'm sure that we'll get more lore as it goes on, but I feel like finally it's developed enough for me to tell you about it. Anyways, is this book good? Honestly, I think it's still a little bit too soon to tell. Again, I actually do like the characters. I find a lot of the events to be pretty compelling, especially this last 100 pages. I feel like a lot of stuff has been happening, but the writing, again, will randomly take me completely out of the moment of the story, either because a word is used that I'm trying not to be annoying, but it genuinely makes me question whether the author knows what it means or just found it in a thesaurus. Frowning, he crouches, so I'm peering down my nose at him, garnishing me with a look of confusion. Fear finally masticates me into oblivion. Or like the main character will just randomly start talking in a scene like she's beefing with somebody on Twitter. Well done. You possess a brain cell. I glance up again, holding the Chancellor's beady glare. I would cheer, but I'm certain that you'll do enough of that this slumber when you're staring at your floor-length mirror, fisting your microcock. Or again, we're just getting sentences that are going on for way too long. His words wedge between my ribs and stab me where it hurts. My withering pride, the remnants of which I'm determined to take to my impending grave, tied to the stake he sentenced me to die upon. Something about the way he rasps the word cuts me down the middle, like he's stuffing those big, strong arms into my frosty depths, churning my lake into a storm of slush. What? This is another lake metaphor, actually. Seems my inner psychopath is paying attention, collecting powerful words it's used like rocks to weigh me to the bottom of this lake of doom. What the fuck does that mean? I promise you it doesn't make sense in context. My gaze lifts to the diadem clinging to her forehead, the black ether stone sitting central amongst the curls of silver metal she's been crowned with since the day, with an E, she took her first breath. That one's not as bad, but again, it's so long, dude. And for what? And for what? So yeah, I mean, it's very difficult, I think, for me to say whether or not I'm enjoying this book, given its polarizing qualities, but I'm certainly going to continue, so more soon.
Wait, guys, is this flirting? I'm going to cut out your tongue with that blade in your boot. I'd prefer you use your teeth, but beggars can't be choosers. Is he saying he would prefer her to bite his tongue off? Do people do that? Do they really, do they really get back there and go, I don't know if I'm just stupid or what, but this is really frying my brain. Like, I can tell that that's meant to be in some capacity sexual. I just don't understand how, why don't you use your teeth instead is a flirty response when the context is in order to cut out my tongue. You know what I mean? Am I stupid? Be honest. I know that the joke is that they want to make out, but I don't. How was that making out? Oh, okay. Peace.
Page 309 update. We are currently 3 hours and 56 minutes into this book. I'm officially pretty close to halfway, but also it's almost 7 o'clock p.m. So that's how long filming takes, I guess. Fortunately for me, considering I'm about to break to eat this sushi that I just had delivered, not a lot happening, honestly, in this 100 pages. So predictably, Khan does come and rescue her from her execution. He comes and flies in on his dragon, which, by the way, is the biggest dragon ever. It's known in the lore to be the biggest dragon, which fits given that this is the biggest man that there's ever been, and that Rave will continue to mention that at every opportunity inside of this book. This is enemy of the twin bed, denizen of the sky, Khan, after all. Okay, of course he has the biggest dragon, but he rescues her for reasons that she refuses to believe are in any way altruistic. They fly off. Fast forward approximately 80 pages of just them bantering, except half of the time in her internal monologue, Rave is like, wish I wasn't so hungry. Feels wrong accepting a meal from somebody I eventually intends to kill and behead, just to be safe. But then the other half of the time she's like, entombed in his molten musk, I find a smooth, grounding sort of comfort that does things to me. Makes me picture sweaty, snarling warriors scorched beneath this overbearing blaze. A blood-heating smell that muddies my mind and makes me want to slap myself. Which is a dichotomy that I find to be honestly pretty annoying. Like, we have entered the perpetually horny and angry phase of this book, but also, given that her brain is broken and she has no memories of him, I do have some sympathy for this weird thing that she's definitely going through. But important events. They fly to his kingdom and stay in this, like, little hobbit house thing that I guess used to be his mom's at some point before she died. Khan makes her stew. She bites him when he tries to feed it to her because she still has her, like, arms tied up so that way she doesn't kill him. But then she feels bad for biting him and like disrespecting him in the house of his mother. So she apologizes and eats the stew. She steals this super sharp scale from his big ass dragon that she uses after they go to bed. They're sleeping in separate places. He's on the couch downstairs sleeping naked because of course, and she is asleep in the bedroom upstairs after raiding his closet for like a fantasy version of his athletic shorts, but she uses this scale to like sever her bindings, and then she goes downstairs and she's going to kill him with it. She like jumps onto the couch and straddles him and holds the scale to his neck until she's like, wait, maybe I don't want to murder this guy who has done nothing mean to me. Maybe I just want to smash instead. So yeah, they start hooking up, but then she's like, no strings attached though. You keep looking at me all weird and it's making me feel weird and like I want to run away. So stop doing that and then we can bang, no strings attached, right? And he's like, sorry, no, there are definitely strings attached for me. So that ends before it really happens. Rave, embarrassed by this whole interaction and also still very motivated to go and find and kill this bounty hunter guy who killed Essie, even though she has no idea how to get home to her kingdom from here. She has no plan, not even concepts of a plan. She like hops out of a window and runs away and then just decides to jump into a nearby river. Also, it's storming, by the way, this entire time. So the river is even more turbulent than it normally would be. But she jumps into this river and then falls down a waterfall and hits her head, which knocks her out. She goes unconscious. But somehow, miraculously, while she was blacked out, she like grabbed a log or something, so she doesn't drown. She just wakes up on the log and sees these two guys from what is basically a local tribe. They're like ambiguously brown indigenous people who also have red hair. So they're ambiguously Irish and ambiguously brown at the same time, like a true fantasy minority. They're trying to rescue her from this river where she will just definitely die. And also, important context, Khan was a failure to his dad when he was a kid because he could only hear 2 of the 4 gods. He's only a dual bender. So when he was 9, he was sent off to be raised by a local tribe. Probably this local tribe. I think that you can like safely make that assumption. So there's history there, but none of these people speak English. She doesn't know what they want from her. She's trying not to go with them, even though they've just saved her from this river. And Rave is seriously considering just jumping back into this river and seeing where it takes her, when suddenly this gigantic silver like lion creature jumps out of nowhere, and it's called a fate herder. I'm sure that you can gather this, but it herds people towards their fates. And of course, the person it's herding is Rave. It like refuses to let her jump back into this river. It's just standing between her and snarling really menacingly whenever she tries to slink past it. So Rave has to go with these people who are looking upon this entire interaction with clear religious levels of significance, because this is not a thing that is common. Apparently, this is like super duper rare. And she's going back to their camp. That's where we are. Not a lot in these 100 pages, other than massive reveal, actually, although I don't think it's meant to be a reveal quite yet. Turns out that Khan killed his dad, the old king, who I guess was maybe at one point king of the whole empire, which is now split amongst his 3 sons. But Khan did that in this like crazed fugue state after something really, really horrible happened to the love of his life, who is also dead. Who could that be? There's just no way to know, except then he gives us her name, and it turns out that the love of his life, who has been slain, is L.U.N., the girl who was writing the journals 100 years ago. What could that possibly mean about our missing protagonist, about all of her mysterious missing memories? I'm going to laugh my ass off if this is played up later in the book as like an actual twist, given how obvious it is. Because another thing that makes it obvious is that Rave happens to have a favorite moon inside of this sky with the hundreds of moons, and whenever she looks at it, it brings her comfort. It's like a small piece of joy that she can always lean on. And it turns out that the dead dragon that makes up that particular moon is the dragon with the fucked up wing that L.U.N.'s brother was paired with, because when her brother died, the dragon was just so sad that both it would be alone and also her brother would be alone in the ground, that it took his body and it just flew up into the sky and died and calcified with her brother in like the core of the moon. So that's both like unexpectedly very poignant and emotional, but also crazy coincidence that that is the particular moon that Rave feels an attachment to. Wonder why that could be. There's just no way to know.
Okay, hello. 450 page update. We are at 5 hours and 22 minutes of reading. Although I did leave it going for probably 15 minutes by accident when I was taking a break. Oh man. This book. So what happens? Rave is taken in by these ambiguously brown, ambiguously Irish warriors to go and see the rest of the tribe. She's followed this whole time by the fate herder as well, just to like really make sure that she goes there. And everybody there, as soon as they see her with this thing, they like also immediately start bowing. It turns out that when she does ultimately meet the one woman in the tribe that can speak English, that Rave is the Kaholu, like the chosen one. And one day she will give birth to a child that ensures that moons never fall again. That's like her fate, hence why everybody's looking upon her with such reverence. But she gets swept into some celebratory rituals where she's bathed by these women and then they like ritually slaughter what I get the vibe is a cow, which Rave does not like. She will murder 25 soldiers in cold blood, but she draws the line at animal abuse, okay? And the 2 guys who rescued her, I'm pretty sure it's them too, who end up using the blood of this slain animal to like draw ritual markings upon themselves in preparation for the Tuca trial, which Rave quickly discovers is a duel to the death that these 2 guys will embark upon in order to claim the right to take her hand in marriage and ultimately be the sire for this like chosen one child that will one day fix the world. So yeah, Rave is kind of forced to watch as the really big guy kills the smaller guy, and then at the end, of course, you have to cut off his head and like hold it up in the air to prove that you won. And this happens. Rave is still like, fuck you, I don't want to get married to anybody, I don't want children, I take a tonic every phase
which is so fantasy. That's so, I take herbs, I take a tonic every phase to ensure that I won't have children, and you will not catch me missing a dose. That's what she says in her internal monologue. So yeah, she's like, fuck you, I don't accept this. I challenge you for my own hand in marriage. And she steps up, the king and the queen of this tribe. They're like, sure, why not? You can duel for it as long as your fate herder doesn't stop you, which it doesn't. So she starts to fight this guy. He plays dirty because the only way to possibly beat the stabbiest, most feral woman to ever stab people with knives, sorry, the stabbiest, most feral female to ever stab people with knives is to play dirty and to like infect her with a venom that will slow her down. That's how he gets the upper hand, by like throwing a snake at her that also somehow nobody sees. Nobody sees this happen on the battlefield. It's like a literal snake in the middle of a fight, but nobody sees it. Whatever. Anyways, it works. She slows down. He finally gets the upper hand after taking several bad wounds himself. And unlike when he beheaded the other guy to win, all he has to do this time is get her to surrender. So he just keeps punching her and saying, surrender! You need to surrender! And she's like, ah ha ha ha, I will never surrender to the likes of you. I would rather die than get married. So she's just sitting there slowly dying, getting like giga concussed. When, of course, who sweeps in but our big man Khan on his gigantic fucking war crime of a dragon. He comes in and turns out, yes, this is the tribe that basically raised him, that he spent all of his time with. And actually, he was the chief of this tribe up until he killed his dad and took over the kingdom. Not even based on his blood or his status outside of the warrior clan, but because he was the biggest warrior. He took the most names, he got the most tattoos, proving that he had slain foes in battle. That's why he's so cool and so big. So he pulls up, shirtless, of course, on his dragon, and he's like, Hawk, the guy that Rave had been fighting, this is a female who was raised outside of the warrior clan, and therefore she cannot consent to our customs. And Hawk is like, well, fuck that, and fuck you, and also I challenge you, because that's kind of his right as like the weaker warrior. He has the right to challenge the stronger warrior if he doesn't want to accept an order. So they are about to duel to the death over this, over Rave's right basically to not be claimed by anybody, when suddenly the local prophet, the person who foretold the original prophecy about Rave to begin with, she pipes up and she's like, hey guys, just got a new prophecy, hot off the presses. Turns out that if Rave doesn't bond to a warrior today, then everybody here will die horribly. Just thought I would let you know while you guys fought over this, because, you know, my word is bond and I'm a prophet. So yeah, Khan now has to come forward and do like the ritual blood thing, and also give her his ritual necklace that represents his status in the tribe as like a single man, in order to formally put his name into the ring, so that way Hawk does not just default win and do horrible things. He also uses his status as most goated badass warrior in history of this warrior clan to make it so that way, even if he loses, even if he dies, he like has Rave stamp her hand on his back, which is the equivalent of him recognizing her as his better, which would then give her autonomy even within this imaginary relationship with Hawk after he claims her, to leave and to not have to deal with it. So either way, she's safe. Very touching gesture. Everybody in the crowd is silent. They're like, oh my god, I can't believe the best warrior that there's ever been, who's also the most gigantic man I've ever seen, would do this. This is so crazy. Yeah, they fight. Honestly, there are no stakes because there are like 300 pages in the book left, so you know that Khan is not going to die here. He wins. He beheads this guy. He holds his head up to celebrate or whatever, and symbolically places his necklace over Reva's head onto her neck, because now I guess they're like married or something. And yeah, then he flies her to his capital city. And it's only at this point that Rave starts passing out and facing extreme repercussions for the myriad wounds that have been inflicted upon her. But that's that whole scene. Something about it. I'm only going to do the friend that's too woke thing for a second here, because we both know we both know I could go into this, all right? But there's something about the fact that only Khan, the outsider who is not even one of the warrior tribe people, not only did he sweep in previously and become the best to ever do it, and also rule the entire tribe as an outsider, but also, more importantly, he's the only woman respecter in the entire room. Like, everybody else is like, yeah, let's just subjugate the will of this random woman who doesn't even speak our language. They're all cool with that. They're like, whatever, comes with the territory. You should be happy because Hawk has a lot of pelts inside of his little pelt area. He has actually some of the most pelts of anybody in the tribe, which means that he's capable of hunting the biggest and the most unwieldy game, and therefore is the strongest warrior. And you should be like excited to have him sire your children. That is genuinely something that the people in this tribe are like saying to this girl. And that's just, it's certainly a way that you can represent the ambiguously brown, ambiguously Irish indigenous people inside of your fantasy world. I mean, it did give us a couple of fun scenes, I guess, where Khan was like, you're my greater, actually, because I worship you, because I'm in love with you, even though I'll never tell you, because you don't have memories, and I will just yearn in silence. Or like right before the fight, he looks at her and he pounds his chest 6 times, and Rave asks the girl who can speak English, she's like, what does 6 pounds of respect mean if 4 pounds is what you give the strongest warrior? And the girl is like, I don't know. I mean, 5 pounds is what you give the king and the queen. So this is unheard of because he just worships her. He loves her. He is obsessed with her. And that genuinely is getting me through this book at this point. I have to be honest with you. I am not enjoying being in Rave's head. Her thoughts are just like, I'm trying again to have sympathy for her character, but they're so uninteresting and repetitive. And her decision making sucks, dude. It sucks. Why do you jump into a random fucking river when you were trying to run away? But Khan's good, okay? He's a woman respecter, born and bred. His dad and his 2 brothers are extremely evil despots, like absolute tyrants, but he's good. The people in his city have rights and privileges, and they serve in the military voluntarily because of how much love they feel for their nation. Because Khan is based in Cool, and he hopes to one day take over the rest of the kingdom so that way it can be based in Cool too. That's the kind of guy that Khan is. I can't take him seriously either. Anyways, yeah, after that whole sequence, they go to his city, which again, everyone's happy there. This surprises Rave. She's like, wow, I didn't know that people could be happy and like out and about. And maybe I judged you too harshly after all. We officially got the reveal, by the way, in another Khan POV chapter when she's like semi-comatose getting healed from her concussions, that Rave is Eluin, but with no memories because, I mean, obviously everybody at his castle recognizes her. So that's something. I mean, the only other piece of lore, I guess, that we've gotten in the past 100 pages about that is that in Eluin's diary, Khan brings Eluin bread and stew and stuff after she's whisked away to live inside of the castle of her enemies who also killed her family while she's awaiting, I don't even know if I mentioned this, she's awaiting a couple more years to pass before she is ultimately given in marriage to Khan's older brother. That's the plan. That's what's supposed to happen to her. I mean, obviously things go differently. Also, her dragon that she tamed when she was 9, because she's just that girl, her dragon followed her all the way to this other kingdom at great cost to its physical well-being because she had a moon plume as her dragon, and moon plumes cannot survive outside of the cold, and also they go blind whenever they see the sun. So it literally like flew all the way to this kingdom until its wings burned up and it went blind. It's still alive, but it's living right now inside of a barn, basically providing Eluin with comfort because it didn't want her to go all this way alone. I mean, dragons in this book honestly seem to be absolute fucking saints, if you ask me. So yeah, that's happening in her past. And then also we have gotten the implication that at some point, approximately 100 years ago, Eluin ran off and left only a note with Khan, basically, and like abandoned him and abandoned also his little sister who lives in the castle and is also good, unlike their brothers. Her name is Vea, and she's like spunky and a little bit mean, but fiercely loyal. That's her vibe. She also challenged men in the tribe like over and over again, upwards of 80 times, who tried to claim her and make her into their wives, and she, I guess, killed them all. But then as punishment, her dad was so mad at her for not just accepting her fate and getting married that he would whip her all of the time, and she like carries the scars of that. We learn all of this within about 2 pages of her first POV chapter. Again, it seems like there is only one canonical woman respecter in this entire fantasy world, and it's Khan. So everybody else you should not have particularly high hopes for. But yeah, she's there, and she and Khan's entire entourage, they all know who Rave is, but like none of them want to do anything to tell her because they're scared of what will happen. Something bad is gonna happen, I guess. That's really all that's going on. They're fucking around in his city right now. Rave is trying to find supplies because still at this point her only character motivation is vengeance against the guy that killed Essie. She wants to like immediately restock on her entire blade cache, hitch a ride on a molten maw on a dragon, and find him and torture him and knit his skin into a lamp. That's basically her entire goal. She will remind you of it once every 2 pages because she's fucking annoying. But yeah, I think that this is probably the last major check-in that I'm going to do before I get to the end of the book, because I am getting the impression that we are finally maybe starting to enter the last act where things are really going to start to cook, and I'm not really going to be able to explain everything particularly well in a way that I won't just immediately retcon if I try to do it early. So I guess unless I have like a really, really important thing to share with you, or I start like stopping or something, I will probably talk to you when I get to the end of this wonderful adventure. Okay. Wish me luck. This man is saying some stuff right now that I think would get him publicly shamed. Small update, I guess. They started smashing. We're on like page 600 or so. You know, say what you will, but this book actually is fairly slow burn, especially for a romantasy novel. Other than that one time, like 250 pages in, where they almost fuck but then don't, really it's just been tension and banter between them. And say what you will about the success or failure of that banter and tension, but that's all that there's really been until now. So I guess the author had just had a lot in the tank that had been building up this entire book. But this man actually just said to her out loud, I cannot take him seriously. I can't. Not my con. Once you're so wound up, your entire body's shuddering, I'd you, marvel you in italics, then split you like an egg. Don't say that. Don't say that. That's not the mental that I'm looking for right now. What time is it? At 12:06 a.m.? Please. Also, following that up in her eternal monologue with, I snap, chin tucking close to my chest, every muscle in my center pulsing with violent waves of rapture. Babe, we literally just got through that as a society. Nobody got raptured. I don't want you to join them. Not after he says he wants to split you like an egg. Please, please, girl, stand up. Free me from this torment. I'm so close to being done. Also, another sentence just while we're here, so I don't have to read it to you later. We clash in a snarling beat until I'm cresting on a combustion that might just ruin me. I can't, dude. This writing style that I've had to endure for 600 pages, combining with smut, it's too much. I'm too fragile at this point in my life. I don't know how you would expect me to get through this, but I will because I'm really strong and really powerful and braver than you could possibly know, okay? So I'm gonna finish this goddamn book. I'll see you soon. Okay. Hello, I'm done. We're through it. Total reading time, if you're curious, was 7 hours and 51 minutes. That's probably like approximately right. On average, I was reading 88 pages an hour. So that feels pretty good. I feel like I was pretty efficient. What happens? How does this book end? Honestly, the whole thing is such a fucking tease. I'm gonna put that out there right away. So when we last spoke, they were fucking around in the city. Khan's sister and his advisors just generally all really recommended that he not go too fast with telling Rave what her actual identity is, because, I mean, it's implied in the book that, like, somehow this trauma of her maybe death and everything that she's lost has, like, metastasized into dragon blood, dragon fire, with the implication there being that she could literally explode if it's too much. So I don't know how serious that was, but that is what Khan is risking if he goes too fast. So naturally, on like day 3 maybe of being in this city, he decides to bring this woman down to the shrine that is hidden inside of his bedroom, where painstakingly over the course of the last 23 years, Khan has been going around the realm and collecting a bunch of moon shards, which are broken bits of the dragon asteroid moons that fall to Earth. That's what moon shards are. And he's fusing together all of these moon shards that he finds into the original calcified dragon that they once were together before it fell from the sky and broke off into 1,000 pieces. And these are not just any moon shards, but specifically they are the moon shards of Eluin's old bonded dragon that she met when she was 9. Remember that? Remember that crazy thing? When Eluin died, her dragon like crashed through the side of the room that she was in, which we'll get to later, and it took her dead body, flew up into the sky in the same way that her brother's dragon did with her brother's dead body all those years ago, and it calcified around her. But for reasons that, again, like most things in this book apparently are not actually explained to us, somehow over the course of 100 years up in the sky, the calcified dead body of this dragon was able to breathe life back into Eluin, and then I guess presumably keep her alive until ultimately the moon crashes back down to Earth and Eluin, now Rave, walks out into the world before, I don't know, I guess she gets fucking kidnapped or something pretty soon after that. We don't really know. This is another thing that this book does not actually explain to you, what happens after she crawls out of the exploded husk of her dragon. But she does. That's where the title of this book comes from. When the moon hatched and the girl who was inside the moon walks out. I actually liked this plot decision. I thought it was cute. In general, the dragons in this book, we still know strangely little about them, I feel, overall, but again, they're like the most benevolent creatures of all time. I feel like the moon plumes in particular really give Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. That's kind of how I've been envisioning them. So yeah, cool lore decision. Really only drags down by this 700-page novel's absolute refusal to give you fucking anything about all of these irons in the fire that it establishes in a thinly veiled effort to create a bunch of open threads for the sequel that's going to one day come out. I don't know. But yeah, we don't know really anything about it, but I liked it. Anyways, this revelation completely fries Rave's brain. It's just not a good idea, I don't think, from Khan to try to hit her with this one. Hit her with, you know, the corpse of her dead dragon that spent 100 years nursing her back to health. So she gets mad at him. She steals a bunch of his stuff, which he kind of just lets happen because when it comes to her, he is affectionately a little bit of a beta, so he just sits there kind of while she steals all of his shit and is like, I'm leaving and I'm never coming back. And then instead of leaving and never coming back, she goes to the western shore, I think, of this capital city that Khan rules because she's just drawn to it. She wants to know what's there. And after kind of fucking around for a while, she ends up wandering into this little tiny house that's like carved into the side of a mountain, and she begins to get flooded with all of these memories of this previous life that she had with Khan, because Khan was the one who built this little house for them when they were a couple. And at this point, I will tell you the conclusion of their backstory that you kind of get in little spurts. Khan continues to bring her food at this little barn until ultimately she ends up falling in love with him because he's really soft and plays songs for her while she eats. This is obviously bad considering the fact that she is betrothed to his younger brother, so that's not great, but technically it's not coming around for a couple of years, so they spend a bunch of time together, they bang a bunch in the cave until finally doomsday is close at hand, and like 1 month before the wedding is supposed to come around, Khan and Vea, the two good siblings, are sent out to go do stuff in the kingdom, and the king comes back and has a stern talking to withElyuin, where he's basically like, I know that you've been fucking on my good-for-nothing son, who can only do 2 elements instead of 3 because he's a pansy-ass bitch, but checkmate, you can't do that anymore, or I'll kill both of my children that you like. Oh, and also, you're pregnant, and I know about it somehow, so if you want to have a kid, you gotta go fuck on his little brother and like pretend that it's his, so that way one day it can grow up and have a life. Because I guess the king doesn't actually care about whether or not the kid is Khan's. He just cares about the optics of having the diadem carrier, whichElyuin is, by the way. I don't even know if I've mentioned this at all in this video, but remember that little crown that they shoved the soul of the ether god into at the beginning of this book during the lore section?Elyuin is part of the family that wears that crown. And when her family was slain in cold blood,Elyuin took the crown from her dead mother, so she's currently the diadem user. Mostly this seems to be a completely fucked deal. It saps away all of your energy and makes you sad. Much how I feel still talking about this book at 1 in the morning. But yeah, this entire family is held to really high acclaim inside of society, even though it's been 5 million years and nobody really even remembers what the diadem was used for to begin with. Whatever, don't worry about it. But yeah, that's a twist, that she was pregnant and had a child that was actually Khan's the entire time, which turns out that, remember way back at the beginning of this video when I said that we got our first male POV chapter, except it was completely indecipherable? That chapter was Khan talking to the diadem user that he thought was his niece, the daughter of his brother, but is actually from his loins, sewn from his seed, or whatever the fuck this book says. She's his kid, but the implication is that his brother had kept her like super sheltered inside of his kingdom, so she knew very little about the world, but she was embarking upon some kind of strange, still to this day, to be honest with you, indecipherable quest, considering none of these arcs are finished. None of these arcs are actually things that go anywhere. But I guess that she's a really special diadem user because she was able to converse directly with Kalis, directly with the ether god guy, and I guess she's fallen in love with him. So she's trying to do everything that she can to like free him from this prison. Again, would love to give you some more details on this. Would love to tell you how that's been going in, like, you know, the 500 pages in between this chapter and the epilogue, but we haven't learned a single thing about this quest ever since it was introduced. I guess that's on the list for book 2. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because after she discovers the cave that Khan had built for her in this past life when they were in love, she ends up getting really attached to the idea of the space and the idea of like making it her own again, even though she knows it's kind of ridiculous. So she sticks around. She does not get the fuck out of the kingdom and murder that bounty hunter guy, like, again, she's been threatening to for the past 400 pages. Khan goes on this like completely pointless side quest where apparently there's this species of ticks that can make dragons turn feral and turn against their owners and just burn down whole cities. So Khan goes and he handles one of those that's happening in a town in his province, and he's just like gone, I guess, for a few weeks. But he comes back, Rave is still there, daydreaming about this version of herself that was in love with him. And conveniently, right when he comes back, there's this festival that's happening. And what happens during this festival is, instead of there just being one normal
aurora in the sky. There's like a bunch of them for a period of time. And so all of the dragons, they see the pretty sky and they all start smashing inside of the sky. It's like the dragon fucking festival. And all of the humans or the fae or whatever these people are supposed to be, they're really just humans. They all party and they get drunk and they play cards in the kingdom below all of the dragons who are like play fighting and banging in the air. Khan gets wind of the fact that she's been living inside of their cave, so he sends her a letter and he's like, come to the festival. I made you this dress. It's really pretty and I think you'd look really pretty in it. So that's what she does. And yeah, I mean, honestly, nothing at the festival matters at all. Basically, she makes this deal to herself that she will have this one wonderful romantic night with Khan, and then the next day she's going to go to this magic user in the kingdom that's called, I think, like a mind meld. It's something completely literal like that. A mind weft, my bad, but she'll go to a mind weft. They have mind powers, and she will ask the mind weft to completely remove memories of Khan from her brain. So that way... I don't know what the fuck this woman's plan is. I think that genuinely her only thought inside of her head is that she really wants to kill this guy who killed Essie at the beginning of the book. I don't think that she has any plan whatsoever for what she will do after that. But I guess she sees memories of Khan to be an obstacle in the way of this vengeance. So yeah, that's what her plan is. And she tells him as much. She's like pretty upfront about it. But then they have this wonderful night together and oh no, maybe her mind is changing. And also maybe Khan knows her better than she knows herself and knows that she's only being so like prickly and defensive because she's lost other people that she cared about. Khan starts to kind of get that impression, which makes him a lot more understanding towards what she's going through. Great, wonderful relationship development. They bang. They really do bang. There's not very much smut inside of this book. It's like a chapter and a half, which honestly is way less than I was expecting. I feel like the last time I read a 700-page romantasy book, it was like the From Blood and Ash series, where I feel like they were banging every other page. I wish that I could expunge that series from my memory with a mind weft, but there's honestly not a lot of it inside of here. The most unforgivable part was definitely him threatening to split her like an egg still. I can't get over that. I'm so sorry. It's been like 2 hours, but I'm not recovered. But yeah, after that, we then enter the breakneck ending sequence of this book. I mean, a lot happens, but again, absolutely fucking nothing is actually explained. So randomly, out of nowhere, the bounty hunter that Rave has been fantasizing about murdering comes to Calm City waving a white flag, and also for some fucking reason riding a moon plume, again, into this kingdom that is so hot that moon plumes literally burn up into the sky. So Rave watches this happen as he basically crash lands this dragon into the kingdom. It further transforms her into the Joker when it comes to this guy, because once again, she might do mass murder, but she draws the line at animal abuse, okay? None of that. But Khan makes her promise not to kill him while he's still inside of the city, because he basically came as an ambassador, and if he were to die after coming with a white flag on behalf of this other kingdom, they would definitely use it as an excuse to go to war with Khan, which he's not looking for yet. He doesn't feel like his armies are ready. But as a consolation for the fact that Rave can't flay the skin off of this man immediately, Khan gets his itinerary and helps her plan and arrange travel so that way she can kill him while he's staying in this like neutral city on the way home. Super sweet, super nice of him. Really up there, I think, with painstakingly putting together the thousands of pieces of her broken apart dragon. Speaking of dragons, the moon plume that Rek flew into the kingdom, Khan basically seizes and is like, you clearly can't take care of this dragon, so fuck off and ride one of ours on the way home. I will lend one out to you, but the way that you're treating your moon plume is unacceptable. And Rek is like, psh, fine. It was weak anyways. It couldn't handle flying in this environment that is hostile to all of the evolutionary traits that it possesses based on where it grew up. Like, I don't understand why it couldn't do that. So he's like, fine, you can have the dragon. And predictably, Rave bonds with this dragon while Khan is having it healed by the local healer, because they're just two little broken guys trying to do their best in this fucked up world. So that happened, setting it up also for book 2, because you don't see the dragon again for the rest of this book. Also, this whole time, you're finishing putting together these pieces of Rave's past, but crucially, you're doing this from the perspective of other characters, because Rave does not learn any of the things that you learn about her during this book on page. And Khan keeps threatening her with this really important conversation that he wants to have with her before she goes away, but they never actually have this conversation. The last thing that you see is him being like, we really need to talk, but first, go kill that bounty hunter. And he like sends her off into the wild. And that's it. That's it. That's the last time that they interact. She has no fucking idea that she has a daughter, that Khan killed the king who killed her entire family, that her entire family is even dead. She doesn't actually know anything about her history beyond vibey, abstract strokes. And I cannot emphasize to you enough, you spend the whole book assuming that a part of the ending sequence will be her reckoning with these things that she has refused to reckon with for this entire story. You assume that at some point, any of the conflicts will blossom into a somewhat satisfying conclusion. Look, I get that it's a series. You don't have to do literally everything inside of books 2 and 3. You can give us something, some kind of conclusion for any of these character arcs by the end of this book. Anyways, yeah, she goes to this neutral ground, and honestly, in many ways, the book ends where it began, which is with Rave torturing and killing a sadistic predator, except this time, as a result of what happens with the Moon Plume, the anguish is so immense that she actually switches into her alter, who we haven't seen for about 500 pages at this point. She switches into the other, who it turns out has the ability to wield fire magic. And earlier in the book, we also saw that Rave has the potential to wield water magic from Rain. She is the Avatar, which I think is maybe the first prediction that I made when I was reading this book. But what else was she gonna be? Like, as soon as you see, especially, that she can use earth magic, you know that the rest of the bending styles are only to come later in the story. But with the way that the other puts it inside of her internal monologue, I get the impression that in some capacity, Rave had been tortured with fire during her, like, first years after she got question mark, kidnapped and put into the cage. So her waking connection with that god is, like, completely severed. But yeah, I mean, this is, again, a thing that now we know that she can do, so that way more things can happen in book 2, because I guess that fucking nothing was going to happen inside of this. But the last thing that we learn about her, and also the place where this book leaves off, is that for that period of time when she was in the cages, she was peddled into prize fighting rings by this guy called the Scavenger King, who is just randomly revealed to us in like the last 3 pages of this book is the secret evil half-brother of Khan. So that really kind of splits the whole balance of evil versus not evil members of his family. It used to be 3-3 back when the parents were alive, then we went down to 2-2, now we're at 3-2. I don't like that. But yeah, this guy Arkin kept her inside of a cage, gave her the WWE fighting name Firelark, and basically just traumatized her beyond recognition. And the epilogue is from his POV because, oh no, remember how Raven Khan secretly had a child, and that child is now going on a quest? She immediately got caught by this guy, and is now being kept in a cage with her trapped ether boyfriend and her diadem, and Arkin is keeping her as a pawn in his game to pursue Khan's particular portion of the empire for some reason. I'm sure that we'll find out why, but we sure don't know why right now, and isn't that just the story of this entire book? Honestly, I feel like this book took things from me that I'll never get back. I don't think I'll ever have hope again in a book that's this long to go anywhere by the end. Truly, girl, give us nothing. Sorry, female, give us nothing. How do I feel overall about this book? Great question. You see, usually I would take my time to really formulate a response that felt simultaneously true and fair as well to what I feel like the author was trying to do and accomplish. And I'll still do that, but it's going to be in my wrap up. It's not going to be in this video because I think I need to finish filming this tonight, or like, what was even the point? What was even the point of sitting in this room for the past 16 hours? This might seem small, but I would like to first drive home how absolutely fucking stupid the glossary at the beginning of this book is. Not because it exists, because again, I've read books that I think use glossaries to great effect, especially when you read them over the course of more than just one day. A glossary can be really nice when it comes to like refolding the ridges of your smooth brain after a break with a book. But this glossary sucked, and it sucks for 3 reasons. First of all, I'm still bitter that the pronunciation guide didn't have syllable stress. I know that that might seem like no big deal, but I truly do not understand the purpose. Why would you put a pronunciation guide in a book if you're not actually going to tell me how to pronounce the fucking word? You need syllable stress. It's English, dude. I don't want to sound like a fucking clown to audiobook users because I don't know whether it's sereme or sereme. But secondly, much more importantly, much more applicable I think to the masses, having a glossary is not an excuse to not actually explain how things work inside of your world. You should not only explain things in the glossary. And I'm not saying, by the way, that you have to have like paragraphs of exposition where you tell me exactly how each artifact works, exactly what each kind of person does does, but it should at least be clear overall through the context of reading a story what the fuck is going on. There's lore in the glossary that you never really get inside of the book, and I don't like the way that that kind of forces you to use it, not just for like a reminder when you forget something that you've already learned, but as like an actual textbook tool to understand the world. I feel like that's really lazy writing. It's just as bad, in my opinion, as having paragraphs of exposition defining every single term inside of your fantasy world, because that's basically what you're doing. You're just making me flip all the way back to the beginning of the book in order to define all of this shit for myself every single time I come across something. But then also, even worse, not even everything is in the glossary somehow. What the fuck is an octomar, this creature that you're introducing 500 pages into the book? There's a creature section of the glossary and it's not there. Why? Why did you make this decision, dude? If you're going to do it for some of the stuff in the book and you're going to make it essential to understand, generally speaking, how these things work, at least make it exhaustive at that point. I mean, you're already wasting the pages. So yeah, that sucked. Low point of this book for me, how the glossary was used throughout. It's the kind of bullshit too, where I know that there has to be so many people in the romantasy world who think that this book is too confusing for them, just because it never explains its own world. It never explains its own concepts. And I don't know, maybe they didn't read the glossary at the beginning of the book, when what's actually happening is not that confusing. Like, clearly this video is going to be kind of long. I'm sure it's taken me a decent amount of time to explain everything to you, but I don't think it's that hard to follow. You have 3 kinds of dragons in 3 kinds of kingdoms, ruled by 3 different brothers. There are dragon moons in the sky. The main character is the avatar. People can bend elements through song. I mean, that's really the main thrust of everything that's going on. None of that is particularly unique to the point that it would fry your brain, but I feel like for the first 100 pages of this book, especially if you're not using the glossary, it might feel that way to you, just because of how little this book cares whether or not you understand it. So yeah, there's that. Mostly right now, I just kind of feel robbed. I feel like this book promised so many things that, I don't know, man, maybe it will deliver. Maybe you will come to learn a lot of things and it'll be super satisfying inside of future books, but just a fucking smidge, just a fucking taste of that satisfaction at the end of book 1. You can put more irons in the fire during book 2, which I'm sure will also be 700 fucking pages. You're going to have time, okay? You could have given us just a little bit more conclusion on the established plot points by the end of this book. I don't know what else to say, honestly. I mean, I have been through worse reading romantasy on this channel. I did survive Powerless once upon a time, and I maintain that a lot of what this book was doing in terms of plot and world building, I actually found kind of fun and interesting. I think it could have been a lot more fun and interesting maybe if the book were like 200 pages shorter and had a little bit better of an ending, but the seeds were there. Again, I don't need something to rock my world to be like super duper complex to have a fun time. I can get down with something a little bit silly, but this just really felt to me like a waste of time. I don't think that the juice is worth the squeeze, at least in this book, especially given that you have to endure the way that this is written, which might work for some people out on this planet, and I don't want to shame you if it works for you. I'm glad. I wish I could be that jovial and hopeful and carefree and optimistic about my future, but I am just a bitter piece of shit. Especially right now, this deep into talking about this book. And, you know, I have a lot of options. I mean, I tabbed a lot of things inside of this book, but I don't even think I need to read you more quotes. I honestly think that you've seen enough. I have certainly seen enough. So we're gonna end that point there. Characters, I also basically have the same opinions that I had on them in the middle of this book. They're still here now. I still think that Rave was super annoying, made a lot of bad decisions. I don't even really care if I understood why. It gets to a point, maybe I could tolerate this if the book was 500 pages, but dude, I was losing my mind. I wanted to strangle her inside of her internal monologue. I did like Khan. I do think that he was a little bit one-dimensional, given that, again, really his only on-page personality trait is being super obsessed with Rave, and also this like ethical woman respecter and good king. Like, he has some darkness inside of his backstory. But again, because you don't see anything inside of this book, because we go fucking nowhere and none of the character arcs feel at all complete or even at like mini stopping points, end of shift, he's not really given any room by anything that happens to have flaws. So he is a little bit one note, but I did like him. I liked the dragons. That was cool. We're really grasping at straws here. I will probably be able to think of more things I liked about this book by the time I do my reading wrap up. Or maybe I won't. Maybe this will stay my opinion. Right now, this is a 2-star for me, in case you're curious. I don't know if that'll change by the time we next speak, but this female has to go watch YouTube videos in bed for the next 2 hours until I can fall asleep. I know I'm complaining a lot, but I actually do have a lot of fun filming these videos. It makes me feel a lot less insane than when I go through these experiences completely in silence on my own. So thank you for being here. Hope you had a good time. I hope that this video was everything that you wanted it to be, and so much more. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go to bed. I don't have anything else to say. Bye!